Picture the Nuremberg rallies. Hundreds of thousands of raised arms, chanting the name of their beloved Führer. It has now become the mandatory greeting of an entire nation, even, eventually, replacing hello on the telephone. Now try the same scene with a different word. Heil SCHICKLGRUBER. It just doesn't feel the same. Sometimes, maybe because that is all we are used to, some things from history feel almost so destined to be that we can no longer imagine something else replacing it. In a way, Hitler's name has become synonymous with evil, and with that, interesting questions have been raised as to how he came to have this name, because for the first 39 years of his life, Adolf Hitler's own father legally carried the name SCHICKLGRUBER. The only reason he didn't die with it traces back to one bizarre decision made by an old man 13 years before Adolf Hitler was even born. The story starts in the Waldviertel, a hilly stretch of peasant villages in Lower Austria, wedged between the Danube and the borders of Bohemia and Moravia. Intermarriage was common there, so was illegitimacy. Adolf Hitler's family, on both sides, came from here. On June 7, 1837, some 60 years before the birth of Hitler, an unmarried peasant woman named Maria Anna SCHICKLGRUBER gave birth to a son in the village of Strones. She named him Alois. She did not name a father on the record. The most likely candidate was a wandering miller named Johann Georg Hiedler, a man who drifted from village to village plying his trade, and who wouldn't actually marry Maria until 5 years later, in 1842. Even then, following his marriage to the boy's mother, Hiedler did something almost nobody in his position did at the time. He didn't bother to legitimize his own son. Alois grew up carrying his mother's name, Alois SCHICKLGRUBER. In 1847, Maria Anna died. Johann Georg Hiedler, the probable father, the man who'd never claimed his son, simply disappeared. For the next 30 years, Alois SCHICKLGRUBER grows into adulthood, joins the Austrian border police, works his way up into the customs service, and marries, eventually 3 times. For the first 39 years of his life, he just carries the name SCHICKLGRUBER. Then, in 1876, the old miller Hiedler, Alois's father, resurfaces, 84 years old now, in the town of Weitra, and, notably, now spelling his own name not Hiedler but Hitler. He walks into a notary's office with 3 witnesses and formally swears that he is the father of Alois SCHICKLGRUBER. But why now? There is no concrete answer to this, but Hitler's biographer Konrad Heiden says he heard that Alois himself later confided the real motive to a friend, money. An inheritance was on the table from Hiedler's brother, the uncle who had actually raised young Alois, and claiming paternity was a precondition to receiving it. The uncle who actually raised young Alois went by a different version of the family name entirely, Johann von Nepomuk-Huetler. That middle name, Nepomuk, very likely came from St. John of Nepomuk, who was the national saint of the Czech people. This is quite an uncomfortable footnote given that Hitler came from this family with possible Czech ancestry, and yet had undying contempt for Czechs and his attempts to take them over. So on November 23, 1876, Alois crossed out the name Alois SCHICKLGRUBER in the church registry and wrote in its place Alois Hitler. From that day forward, Adolf's father was legally known as Alois Hitler, and the name passed on naturally to his son. 9 years later, Alois would marry his 3rd wife, a young cousin named Clara Polzel, on April 20, 1889, in the small Austrian border town of Braunau am Inn. Their 3rd child was born. They named him Adolf. He was born Adolf Hitler only because an 84-year-old miller, possibly in pursuit of some inheritance, changed his name. In the 1930s, as Hitler's power grew, enterprising journalists in Vienna went digging through the same parish archives and found the whole tangled history. By then, the man had already built an entire mythology around the name and his origins. His only real boyhood friend, August Kubizek, later recorded that Hitler privately confided just how much he appreciated his father's change of names. In Kubizek's account, Hitler found SCHICKLGRUBER uncouth and clumsy, but Hitler, by contrast, sounded nice and was easy to remember. Even as a teenager, long before any thought of ruling Germany, he seems to have understood that a name is a kind of branding. And this origin story also directly explains why the name has been lost to history. The specific spelling of Hitler existed alongside similar sounding names of other variations, including the variations Hiedler and Hütler in his own family alone. Thus, with the complete poisoning of the name to public perceptions after the fall of the Nazi regime, his specific variation of the name has also waned in popularity over the years to almost a grinding halt. It probably is not worth the amount of times one has to explain why they are named Hitler.